Today, in our Devember 6th devlog, things didn't go quite as expected for YouTuberizer. Hello, fellas and Blind X Fanatics. Odat Nerd here for your devlog for Devember 6th for YouTuberizer. Let's go ahead and jump into the code, and we're going to see that there is actually only one commit that I pushed up, and that is this one right here from earlier on in the afternoon. Sad Sunday, pretty busy day. We were putting up our Christmas decorations and doing other things of that sort. So I only had an hour of time to play around with code, and the first thing I did was this. We want to start modifying the way that we're collecting data out of the YouTube API to be a little bit more fluid, if you will, because right now all of our requests are very static. You say, I want information on a playlist, and it gives you a specific set of information, or I want details on a video, and you get specific information. We'd like to make that a little more open-ended, if you will. So the first thing we did was just very simply, we can go ahead and even click the old button here to see, was modify all of the requests, the channel details, the one for getting some other information, so that you can provide in the request, if you want, you can provide the part that gets sent in the request. So instead of being a hard-coded string, we're actually pulling it out of the request, defaulting it to that. Now, there's a couple of casings in here. So when we request channel data, after we get the results, we can say that we received information for the channel if someone asked for information that would provide that information. Otherwise, if you asked for the ID information, it'll give you information on the channel ID that it got information for. Otherwise, it'll just say that it received channel information. And the other ones are very similar as well for fetching playlist content, only this one's a little bit different because we do have the idea of this full details part that gets us to request a lot of details for a video as opposed to just a basic understanding of what is actually contained inside of the playlist. So this one's a little bit different in that the first thing that it would ask for is content details only, or whatever it is you provide in this other list, which defaults to that if you don't have full details turned on. And then we gather the information based on the actual part, and maybe also use your request in a different part. So it actually appears in here twice. And of course, video details does the exact same thing. So the idea here is any existing code will continue to work the way that it was, but if you wanted to get video details only about a little bit of information, you could totally do that. Or you could flesh it out as desired to make things more flexible. And that's the first thing I did. And then I moved into, we want to change how our caching works a little bit because I want to make that caching persistent. I want it to be written out to disk when requests are made, loaded back in at startup. There is some caching in here. We're not going to go over it here because it's something that wasn't developed here, but it is described in the Devember 1st live stream that happened. If you want to go back and see the overview of everything that existed in the package before we started on Devember. And I wanted to extend that out to make that cached on disk so that restarts on the same day, maybe over a period of days, would just reload the cache data and not necessarily have to make any physical requests for any information that wasn't already present, because I tend to only upload videos once a week anyway, so having to constantly fetch the information down, kind of wasteful. And there's an API quota as well. And I started working on that, and then I got part of the way through, and I realized that we don't want to keep doing caching the way that we're doing it now, because the way that we're doing it now basically caches the request object that created something with the result that came back. So if you ask for the exact same thing a second time, which most of these things did up until today, you would get the exact same data back. And caching that would be okay because everything is hard coded. But now that it's not hard coded, it occurs to me that maybe we want some sort of additive cache happening locally. And by that, I mean, instead of caching the results of a request for video details, maybe we cache the video details themselves. So the first time you ask for this request and you only provide snippet, then the value of the information for that video ID is stashed in the cache. And if you come back later and request for the video ID again without refreshing the cache, then whichever other items you add will be added to the cache data, and maybe the other one will be updated. So apart from several requests that get stuff, basically this means that the caching has to be done based on the actual data that's being received instead of the request that's being made. And because of that, I sort of backed out and threw away the code that I had, because I think that means we need to refactor and rethink about how the caching works as a whole. I think that means it has to be more of an interface in this, that each one of these items actually uses to push the data in, because only they will know what information it is that they're actually trying to request at any given point. And that means that these would also be responsible for pulling the data out of the cache, which will slow things down kind of a little bit, sort of, because the current mechanism for caching has the item that submits the request just immediately pulling data out of the cache and returning it without ever submitting it to the network thread if it knows it has a result. So there's a slight delay imposed in getting it into the network thread so that this code can determine that it already has the information. Maybe there's a way around that, I don't know. But for that reason, I ditched the other code that I had, or didn't really have time to work on it, and I don't think any of it is really salvageable. I think we want to set that aside and just redo it again after we get the caching done, which is something that I'm going to be working on tomorrow in that. And then if I don't finish it tomorrow, we'll be doing it in the live stream on Tuesday at 8 o'clock PST. It's 8 o'clock Pacific, right here on this very channel. Use the button down below, thumbs, subscribe, and share, ring the bell notification icon, and you will get notified that that is the case. And remember, tomorrow on the other channel, with the link down in the description, we're going to be doing some plugin 101. I'm going to go start the final render of that video right now. So until the next time you see me, this is ODAT Nerd asking you to please have a sublime day.